Hi, my name is Jared, and this is Horror Obsession. Today, I want to talk about No One Will Save You 2023, a new science fiction psychological thriller streaming on Hulu. This movie has been generating interest due to its fun gimmick, which is there is almost no dialogue in the entire movie. There are only 8 words spoken in the whole thing, and I want to give my full thoughts on that after we get into spoilers. Before we do, I want to say this movie is probably worth watching if you like alien stuff. The plot is very straightforward, which is a loner girl living by herself in the country, haunted by her past, is attacked by aliens invading the house. A simple setup, and overall the movie is well executed. It is not exactly my cup of tea, and I have a lot of gripes, but it is a pretty cool movie and I can see why people like it. Go check it out, it is free and you could do a lot worse with your evening. Alright, so let's get into spoilers. First, what I liked. No One Will Save Us is very well shot, and I particularly liked the drone work in this movie. Drone shots are kind of a cliche in bad movies these days since you can get pretty good shots for fairly cheap, and No One Will Save Us takes advantage of this. There is this cool shot of the house slowly descending down towards the ground that I really liked. Some quick context, the aliens leave this circle of dead grass where their beams land on the ground, and there is a great shot of Bryn, the main character, driving out of town on the bus with all the beam circles in the yards around the road. This visual storytelling was excellent and indicated to the audience the aliens we had seen up until that point were not isolated incidents, and there were a ton of them, and we were about to find out they had started taking over the town. Little moments like this are where the film really excels, and the directing and cinematography were both very good. In terms of the acting, the movie is basically just Bryn, played by Caitlin Dever. She's won a couple of awards, mostly for a show I've never seen called Dope Sick, and apparently is pretty well regarded. I think this is my first time seeing her, and I thought she did a great job. As I mentioned before, the movie has almost no dialogue, so there is a lot of acting necessary to get across the emotions of the scene, and Caitlin does a really good job emoting. It is pretty clear what emotion is being portrayed, and what is happening from scene to scene is pretty easy to figure out, which sounds funny to say, but for a movie with almost no dialogue, that could have been a disaster. They avoid this largely on the strength of Caitlin, so nice job there. In terms of the story, I think this is both a strength and a weakness. What I liked about the story is the overall structure, which follows the general alien invasion tropes. Essentially, we establish the character's normal life, like Mel Gibson and his family on a farm, and then spooky things start happening that are kind of unexplainable, like crop signs in your cornfield. And then the movie follows a haunted house structure with characters investigating strange noises and wandering around dark houses, followed eventually by the reveal of the aliens. This is a structure of signs, dark skies, fire in the sky, and the fourth kind. No One Will Save Us follows in the footsteps of these movies, but adds the gimmick of almost no dialogue. This is the part of the story I don't like, and it has to do with gimmicks like this in general. The decision to have almost no dialogue was obviously made early on, and the story had to be warped around this concept. Early on, Bryn is attacked by an alien and manages to kill it, and then is trying to get into town to tell someone about the incident. She even has the dead body of the alien to show to the police or whomever, but her car won't start, so she can't go into town. When I saw this, I figured the decision was made because going into town would mean she would have to talk to someone, and we can't have that, we have to stick to the gimmick. She does make it into town with her bicycle sometime later, and she goes to the police chief. The problem is, she murdered the police chief's daughter, so he isn't super happy with her, and the mom just spits in her face. The dad gives her a mean look, and the scene ends. This is probably the scene where the story suffers from the gimmick the most, since any rational person would have rehearsed what they were going to say long before they got to the station. She could have gone with something like, "I know I killed your daughter, but I was literally attacked by an alien this morning. I know that sounds crazy, but I have the dead body at my house. Please come take a look." The problem with this is that it would have required her to use her words, but oh no, we have to keep going with the gimmick, so we can't have that. What this scene exemplifies is that in order to stick with a gimmick like this, you have to intentionally tell a worse story. The lack of dialogue can get the point across, I guess, but never in as realistic of a way. The visual storytelling is more challenging, sure, but the point of a movie is to tell a compelling story, and handicapping yourself just for the sake of saying you handicapped yourself is kinda silly. A gimmick I can think of that actually worked is No Country for Old Men, where there is no music in the movie. This is very different than no dialogue, obviously, and was a conscious choice by the Coens because they had amazing sound design to help make up for it. And they are masters of creating tension and suspense in their movies, even in the absence of music. No One Will Save You doesn't really have a replacement for the dialogue, except keeping the main character isolated the entire movie. And anytime there is another character on screen, sticking to the gimmick is ridiculously obvious and takes you out of the movie. Another issue I have is the decision to give the aliens telekinesis. In Bryn's first encounter with an alien, we find out they can move objects with their mind. This includes the fridge doors and this funny scene where the alien is opening and closing the fridge door for some reason. To be spooky, I guess. Who knows? The alien can also move people with its mind and uses its force power to pull Bryn close, where she stabs it in the head. In that scene, I kept wondering why the alien doesn't kill her, though to the movie's credit, they explain that later. Once it was clear the alien wanted something else from her besides killing her, it seemed kind of obvious to use the force powers to hold her in place, but instead the alien wants to mess with her kitchen. Open, shut. Open, shut. I kept thinking, this is so much like a ghost movie. Like every haunted house movie has a scene like this where the ghosts are spookily moving stuff around, which I guess is supposed to be scary but exists entirely for the audience's sake and makes no sense whatsoever in terms of the ghost/alien actually being motivated to do something like this. So, you guys built 1,000 interstellar spaceships, loaded yourself up in your wormhole transportation thing or whatever you did to get here, flew down to this lady's country home, also you could use your telekinetic powers to menacingly move stuff around her kitchen. Open, shut, open, shut, open, shut. Giving the aliens telekinetic powers damages the movie far beyond just this one scene, however. Most of the rest of the movie is aliens trying to catch Bryn, and they do weird stuff like crawl towards her upside down on the bus, and that person is actually infected with an alien crustacean thing, so basically the plot of The Night of the Creeps. Bryn hasn't seen that movie apparently because she's very surprised by the whole thing, and later she is running from even bigger and weirder acting aliens. These ones aren't into moving stuff around the kitchen, but apparently seem to be into alien yoga. It isn't clear whether these ones have telekinetic powers, but after it was revealed in that first scene, I couldn't help but wonder why they don't just stop her from running away rather than chasing after her. Maybe the ones with telekinesis are rare or something, who knows, certainly not me, since there's no dialogue to explain anything. There was another scene later where one of the aliens runs at Bryn and jams its head through the car and apparently can't get out. Dude, just back up the way you came. You're acting like a dog or something. These things mastered interstellar travel and are taking over the Earth, but haven't figured out that backwards is the opposite of forward. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the murder. So throughout the movie, it is clear Bryn is writing a letter to someone who is dead, or at least it is clear to anyone who watches way too many movies like me. Like I've discussed a lot on this channel, movies love giving their characters trauma in their past, so we find out Bryn has some very early on. She is mourning something that happened 10 years ago to her best friend, and by the end of the movie, Bryn relives the moment and we find out her friend pushed her down, and in retaliation she picks up a rock and beats her to death with it. Wait, what? Yes, you heard me right. It was not an accident or some tragic misunderstanding. Bryn just straight up murders her friend in cold blood. With a rock. I have no idea why they decided it makes the most sense to have her kill her friend intentionally, rather than to show it to be an accident, but geez, that was a doozy of a decision. It is kind of hard to relate to Bryn already, mostly because of the whole no dialogue thing, but we see her reading a book by a lake, teaching herself how to dance in a kind of lonely, kind of cute scene, so they did a good job making her relatable early on. Once we see the incident though, I was just like, damn girl, I'm surprised you aren't in prison. Also, the police chief has every right to be pissed at you and hate you. I mean, this was no accident, look at this. This is serial killer stuff right here, and it kind of ruins Bryn as a character. Overall, No One Will Save Us is a decent movie. Caitlin does a good job as Bryn, and the directing is pretty good. The gimmick is annoying and really distracts from telling a good story, sticking out like a sore thumb on multiple occasions and holding the movie back. Bryn's character is well acted, but her character Ghost is poorly executed, and the design of the aliens could have used some tweaking, namely getting rid of the telekinetic powers. You gotta pick a lane. Is this an alien movie or a haunted house movie? The intelligence and motivation of the aliens is all over the place, and I haven't talked about the ending, but I thought it was kind of stupid. No One Will Save Us starts pretty strong and it gets worse and worse as it goes. Never a good sign, and by the time the movie ended I was pretty relieved, which is a terrible sign considering my apocalyptic horror obsession.